Okay, I want to talk just very briefly and generally about peer review. And I've also included a PowerPoint that's about the peer editing, peer review workshop process. If you haven't already looked at that, then pause this, and then once you finish looking through all of those slides, then come back and we'll chat just a little bit about the overall goals. Okay. So you'll notice that we call this process peer review most of the time. Sometimes you'll see peer editing, sometimes you'll see workshopping. And I know that maybe this is a review for you, but let's talk just a little bit about what those terms mean. When people say workshopping, then they're invoking sort of the artist's workshop, and even more than that, the creative writing workshop, which is a model for teaching and judging creative writing that developed in the 20th century in Iowa, most famously, where writers would get together and then they'd bring the pieces, the stories or the poems that they'd written, and they'd pass them out to the room. Everyone would read them and then come together and give comments to the writer, who would sit quietly and take notes, and then only at the end maybe get to make some comments about the writing. Obviously, we're not going to do exactly that same process, but that's where the idea comes from. So sometimes you also hear it called peer editing, and then I like to call it peer review most of the time, and most writing teachers do these days. And there's a very clear reason for that. When we talk about editing and revising, we're talking about the last phase, usually, of what people think of as their writing process. There's a difference between the two things. Editing means sort of copy editing or proofreading, or looking for errors and mistakes in your spelling and punctuation and commas. Revising, on the other hand, tends to mean, well, it literally means looking at again, view and read. So you're looking at something again with new eyes. And that's more what I want you guys to do when you're doing peer review for each other, more than editing. In fact, I would prefer that all of you don't do any proofreading for one another at all. The first reason for that is I'm more concerned with you guys thinking about rhetoric and about big questions and about questions you want to ask the writer. Is this the best structure you could use? Is there something else that you might consider in terms of evidence to include? Or is this a thought that you maybe hadn't considered before? Is this a counter-argument you've considered? Are you sure that this is the best and most effective language to get your point across? Ask questions and be specific. Remember, your goal is to help the writer make that rhetoric even better. Your goal is not just to be a copy editor. Your goal is also not to be their grammar teacher. Remember, I am here also, this is what I do for a living, I enjoy it, I'm good at it, let me do the copy editing, let me worry about sentence structure and issues. If you find that you are absolutely compelled to make some kind of comment on a person's style or on a person's sentence structure, make one comment, give one specific example, and then let it go. I want the bulk of your critique to be focused on their ideas and on helping them generate better thought. Okay, so your goal, remember, is to help one another. That's your first goal, but there is a second goal, and the second goal is to get you in the habit of being a critical reader. And so reading like a reader, reading like what a reader would expect to see in a published piece. I want you to start picking apart arguments and then thinking about the way that those same criticisms might apply to your own writing. I want you to get used to that too. Okay. Be sure that you follow the peer review guidelines that are set out, and if you have any questions, of course, always, please be sure to shoot me an email.